Please help me welcome to the stage, JamieLynn Warber.
Thank you. By most anyone's standards, my childhood was pretty dramatic. From an early age, the odds were stacked against me. Did you know that 1 in 5 students have a learning disability? Yep, I was that statistic. I was diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, and dyslexia when I was 7 years old. That meant I couldn't concentrate. I saw words, numbers, and letters backwards, and my reading comprehension was so low that my parents were actually encouraged not to inspire me to go to college. And my mother, she suffers from bipolar disorder. Statistically, children who are born into a home with a mentally ill parent like mine are 26% more likely to suffer from major depression at some point in their life. Yeah, I was that statistic too. While I wasn't diagnosed with depression, it wasn't necessary. I knew that I was. Did you know that children of mothers like mine with a mental illness are 2 to 5 times more likely to suffer from neglect, physical abuse, and sexual abuse? Yeah, I was that statistic too. As a child, I was emotionally abused by my mother and sexually abused by 5 of my family members. The abuse didn't happen just once. It happened through an 8-year span from starting at the age of 8 years old. Now later, I became a victim of an online predator, which isn't really surprising if you know that the statistics are, victims of sexual abuse are extremely likely to be re-victimized, a risk of over 1,000%. So yeah, I was clearly that statistic too. Oh, and adolescents who are sexually abused have a 3 to 5 times higher risk of delinquency. Yeah, I was that statistic too. Growing up in the environment that I did had me take actions that, although unknowingly, were against the law, and I paid the price by serving a 3-month probationary sentence. Look, I don't think I need to fill you in on all the graphic details surrounding my childhood to see that it wasn't pretty. And with statistics like mine, I'm sure you can imagine what my future could have been. The odds were clearly stacked against me. So how is it that I stand here tonight, stable, happy, and in love with the world? A college graduate, a published author, a mother of 2 gorgeous children, and a wife to an adoring husband. How did I get here? How did I beat the odds of a statistically bleak future? Now, when I look back, I can clearly see 3 pivotal insights that I had along the way that had me break the cycle of being yet another statistic. 3 lessons that allowed me to create a future that would have otherwise never happened. First, the very first lesson I learned was never go it alone. As I mentioned earlier, I was abused by 5 of my family members. Now, I may sound matter-of-fact about that, but do not underestimate the challenge it was for me to break free from a cycle of abuse like that. Somehow, though, at the age of 15, I discovered that if I wanted to accomplish something difficult, I needed to recruit a buddy, a person who would hold me to account. And in this case, this person needed to hold me to account, to speak with a woman who would then hold my family to account for the 8 years of abuse that I had endured. A decision that would most assuredly negatively impact the lives of almost every one of my family members. And needless to say, this was not going to be an easy conversation. And I wasn't going to go it alone. I had to break this silence and disrupt this lonely journey that I was on. Now, I remember sitting on my bed, telling my dear friend Missy how my cousins had assaulted me. After sharing these ugly details, Missy responded, "Now what?" Physically, I felt ill. I knew I had to tell my school counselor, Mrs. Blank, about the abuse. Missy pressed on. "When are you going to do it?" I paused, considering this promise carefully. "Monday," I said, and I did. Dramatically. Thank you. Dramatically altering the direction of my seemingly predetermined future. I am clear that if I hadn't told my friend, if I hadn't broken that silence, if I had tried to go it alone, I may have never made it into Mrs. Blank's office, allowing myself the opportunity for a new start. Never go it alone. Once I had this new start, a clean slate, I had the urge to dream again, to dream of a future that was never possible before. I wanted to be a writer and a public speaker, but it seemed like every time I shared that dream, people would put me down. They would say, "You'll never achieve it because of your learning disability and background." So I'm sitting in class one day, and I'm writing a story, and I'm so excited. These words were spilling out of my head faster than I could capture them on paper. Mrs. Merton, my teacher, she interrupts me to hand back a homework assignment. There had to have been at least 20 errors on this page. Red pen was everywhere. As she hands me back the assignment, she asks, "What are you working on?" "A great story," I tell her. Mrs. Merton shakes her head. "With all these spelling errors, you'll never be an author." Now, I could have listened to her. I could have put down my pen. But thankfully, at the young age of 16, I knew not to listen to naysayers. I could have also listened to the statistic that says over 36% of students with a learning disability drop out of school before graduation. The odds were stacked against me, but in this case, I wasn't that statistic. Sorry about that. Instead, I thumbed my nose at the naysayers. Not only did I graduate high school early with a 2.5 extra credits in creative English classes, I went on to graduate with a bachelor's degree in fine arts in an accelerated program. Thank you. Oh, and those writings that Mrs. Merton said I would never author, I submitted those to a competition beating out thousands of entries for publication. Never listen to the naysayers. So now, with my accountability buddy in my arm and those naysayers in my wake, I move forward learning about my third lesson of how to beat the odds: allowing myself to dream. I learned that if I could dream it, I could accomplish it. Or, in the words of the great Muhammad Ali, if the mind can conceive it and the heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. So I dreamt of my Prince Charming. Statistically, though, being a victim of this kind of childhood abuse that I had endured, the odds of having a committed relationship and being emotionally stable were a long shot. But no, I wasn't that statistic either. In 2008, I walked down the aisle creating a committed and loving partnership with a man of my dreams. His name's Mike, by the way. Oh, and I can proudly say that we have been together nearly 17 years. Our relationship is very loving and very supportive. And now I had another dream. I dreamt of being a loving mom. Again, a statistical long shot. But I wasn't that statistic either. I allowed myself to dream. And here come the tears. In 2011, we had our first of 2 gorgeous children, Jalen and Freya, which little Freya is being very quiet right now. So on to my next dream, making a difference. I want to stop the cycle of abuse. I want to change the statistics for other teens who have been victimized by sexual assault. I knew to do so, I would have to speak out. Remember when I said I wanted to be an author and a speaker? Well, here I stand before you today, another long shot. Now, you may be surprised to hear that I live in Wisconsin, despite the fact that the DEBx program requires me to be physically present for every training. I did not let that stop me. I kept my dream out in front of me, and I obtained sponsorships to fly me across this country so that I could be here tonight with you. Don't ever stop dreaming, and don't ever stop taking actions towards those dreams. By most anyone's standards, my childhood was pretty dramatic. But by allowing myself to dream, by shutting out the naysayers, and by building a solid network of accountability partners, I beat the odds. And you can too. Did you ever hear of that statistic that says 100% of people who follow their dreams live happily ever after? I am that statistic. Thank you.